court case, which is having independent way and independent process, which isn't related to any political, commercial, or systematic managements, but rather is having strictly official aims in the custody of isolated by the appointed crimes of Riga city courts, which must be justified by laws, facts, concerns, and obligations by real freedom takings in jails to the ones guilty, the ones involved. There is a list of criminals which is ignored to be executed, as well as the requests are simply ignored by the feministic and authoritative criminals which aren't willing to be obeyed to power of national legislations and functionalities, obligations, responsibilities, unless such are applied by the force. There were several attempts to influence the involved courts and parties in Republic of Latvia by the legal documents, procedures, and appointed invoices in strictly official issues which are connected between each other from existing civil agreements, contractual agreements, government structure, court prosecution organization performances, which are obligative by law, but are leaded electronically without any personal responsibilities unless such are applied by the force. Since no solution is actually achieved up to today, due to game type perceptions of involved criminal parties and malfunctional organizations, representatives, authoritatively criminal players in the court systems, which are extremely destructive to existing legal managements, freedoms, family values, private values, or the country securities, which are related to all citizens, all the internal interests and external cooperational connections. They do not understand the seriousness in strictly legal issues or personal responsibilities due to absence of understandings of the methods which will be used for the forced legal consequences as the only option for common national securities in European Union territories, as well as in the systematic orders, which is simply ignored by those who aren't realizing power of objective national legislation in strictly legal issues or obligations. Any system can be accessed or overridden for appointing responsibilities or the consequences as stated by laws and appropriate circumstances in any individual court cases if deliberate ignorances of game type authorities, players, or systematic criminal managements which are in conflict with existing national government jurisdictions without their own permissions. Same way can be applied strictly official responsibilities in criminal meanings to involvements as per existing facts of performed crimes or deliberate violences in executions of functional duties in their leveled managements and organizational functions. All the involvements in European Union court case, crimes, systematic connections, and objective violences are electronically hooked for the forced legal consequences in order to stop criminal managements by the power of legal responsibilities and functional executions in appropriate government, court, prosecution, ministerial, or the private organizations. Government legislation is having no mercy to statuses, to wills, to capabilities, or to the males. Justice of criminal females is same obligation as justice of any other criminals as per existing facts, concerns, and appropriate responsibilities in case of ignorances. In, in Riga city are still continuing destructive managements through the remote capabilities in systematic performances in tries for power keeping by the appointed crimes, discriminations, or deliberate violences to other regions, since they aren't willing to execute healthy functionalities due to competitive psychologies and criminal mentalities. Criminal mentalities are expressed in the prisoners' psychologies in discriminative tries of overcome of execution of any functional duties or so-called level of authority. This is very destructive in official issues or heavy solutions which are obligative by law in any individual circumstances or court cases or specific priorities. Like in my case, is needed underage son's permanent custody and security by law, which is described in the legal documents and official obligations of the police, court, and prosecution system representatives, but actually they are malfunctional for heavy solutions or appointing of strictly legal responsibilities to criminal representatives in internal systems of managements, since thus are trying to overcome existing national jurisdiction by the appointed crimes and deliberate violences, since no responsibility can be applied if above instances are simply ignoring own obligations. Objective national legislation is much above computerized managements in legal issues, since effectiveness of power of law can't be controlled by the computers, same as legal responsibilities by the ones who are leading electronic, systematic, or computerized managements must be within the frames of national legislation. If national legislation is tried to be overcome by the commercial managements which are willing to destroy existing government values, national freedoms, legal managements, or family or the security matters, they do not understand that they setting up themselves to inevitable legal responsibilities, such as criminal by real freedom takings in jails as stated by laws, and or systematic in the commercial expressions. National law in criminal meanings having no attitude or any mercies to statuses, males, nationalities, or the territorial belongings. In present European Union court case are existing all founded threats in the systems and electronic mobile managements for appointing of strictly legal consequences in order to prevent future crimes, as well as to assure that any performed crimes will be justified strictly by the power of national laws and existing procedures. If the procedures won't be working in legal government structures or court performances, functionalities of such will be degraded to the commercial weapon for any types of criminals. In turn, protection from appointed issues will not be actually working or effectively um, protecting legal values, freedoms, or securities. In this case, in this court case, and private situations are involved a lot of various systematic interests and a lot of counter forces for tries of criminal power keepings in their competitionally criminal or feministic psychologies, for tries of overcome present court case existing facts or personal responsibilities by various types of non-legal methods. Concerning the COVID-19 criminal management in systematic obey's of the countries which aren't able to resist due to the weakness of the managements, such massive crimes and destructive managements, direct involvements from Dutch Royal Club and related into anonymous management crimes representatives are all founded. They will be set for legal consequences as per National Criminal Law Article 79, which states 12 years of freedom taking in jail to any existing person involved in that crime. If not to justice crimes, there will be no actual protection from permissiveness of criminal or malfunctional bodies, whatever their statuses, capabilities, or systematic performances are. Computerized managements are much below objective national legislation. But effectiveness of such in legal issues can't be achieved if the duties, obligations, and functionalities of government, court, prosecution, or ministerial systems are simply ignored due to the fact that thus representatives are led with own commercial interests, whatever the criminal methods of thus leaders are. To colonize the countries by the appointed heavy criminal issues or massive scales of colonization by the destructive methods are actually the subject for total justice of the sources of destructive managements to humanity. National values can't be protected out of national laws. Any developments can't be achieved in the forced methods of criminal managements or malfunctional institutions. If the obligations of the courts, prosecution, or government police are to perform functionalities as per existing jurisdictions, concerns, and or petitions, thus must be executed at the same level as to brush the teeth. If criminal players or the feministic mentalities for tries of power keeping aren't willing to understand that obligations will cause negative consequences such as personal responsibilities and inevitability of legal consequences to any system, to any government or country management, or thus systematic representatives, they are destroying themselves. But worst is that they are destroying others with the same attitude, the legal managements and ignorances of legal functionalities, especially in official justice of criminal females as per facts of their crimes or deliberate violences. In the authoritative methods of criminal competitiveness aren't taken into account existing risks of fatal murders. Blue and black managements aren't understanding inevitability of any types of official responsibilities within the frames of the globe, since thus are competing for own power or tries of overcome by the appointed discriminations to others, unless thus bodies aren't placed to jails, aren't anyhow justified by legal measures and or reasonably murdered. To compete with the wall and life supporting values by the appointed distractions is the same as to dig a hole under the house which will set the house down. To explain to commercially leaded players that for performed crimes will be necessary to hold legal responsibilities even for inactivities to official concerns is useless unless such are applied, because they don't believe, they don't accept if not beneficial. Benefits in turn can't be protected if power of law doesn't have a legal effect. Any accounts, any systematic performances can be used by the appointed consequences in strictly official issues. If the court performances aren't functional or are willing power by the crimes which must be justified by law to real jail, then courts aren't capable to execute actual functionalities. Therefore, the electronic managements in related to government organizations are very dangerous if thus are distractive or leaded out of national laws. Criminal mentalities isn't possible to adjust to direct to legal or to make functional. This conclusion is based by the European court case flow, which is lasting more than 4 years. Sun's isolation is 53 months from the appointed crimes in Riga city with existing civil court judgment for underage kids custody to separated parents, due to the fact that national legislation isn't working in real justice of criminal bodies, whether such are mothers, whether such are police players, whether such are judges or prosecutors, ministerials, or the politics. To establish effectiveness in official solutions is necessary to rely on facts, procedures, and appropriate national legislation. If the authoritative courts are willing to have power by the distractions, thus must understand the legal responsibilities which are stated in any country's national jurisdictions. Legal issues are having official time frames, executions, and obligations. In the scaleful cases like present European Union court case with a lot of involvements to criminal managements are set for fatally legal consequences by the forced collections of objective bodies, whatever nationalities, males, statuses, or capabilities are. As per facts of direct, indirect involvements and appropriate legislation in objective meanings. Systems in turn are set to commercial payments which must be enforced from abroad for executions of legal obligations in strictly official payments. Concerning competitive psychologies in discriminative performances, most of the toilets, most of the discriminative females and public methods of criminal performances are systematically recorded for strictly official consequences to self-destructive criminals, because when there is an attitude or trace of competence by the distractions to others in legal processes, exist responsibilities and consequences which can't be realized by the criminal mentalities or so-called prisoners' psychologies until such are applied. Strictness of systematic performances in national legal expressions must work in the official processes like the clock. If that is not happening, the clock mechanisms with a lot of various types of connections might simply break down. Same what is happening in the governments when internal national orders might be remotely managed by any criminal methods of systematic obeys, which must be justified by real freedom takings in jails. Absence of adequacy in top management levels or absence of their responsibilities for under carpet crimes, discriminations, distractions, or malfunctions is the first step to degrade the whole existence of the humanity on the planet Earth. All the main sources of such destructive performances were investigated and found in the global scales. However, their perceptions can't be changed due to the will of power and parasitic parasitic commercial benefits which are in conflict with existing fundamental values. That will never happen because the countries will become black markets, whatever the names are. If not to justice criminal performances of such destroyers, their virus capabilities or managements might grow to heavy destructions of various populations. Therefore, strictness of responsibilities, especially in legal justice, of criminal females or malfunctional players with undercarpet distractions, discriminations, or tries to compete by the crimes will lead to complete remote controls of the ones who are responsible for executions of justice. Therefore, I would like to inform all the judges, all the prosecutors in European Union court case that from their disciplines, internal strictness of functional obligations are depending on countries. If they are willing to play games, then better to do that in appropriate places. If they are willing to compete, then it's better to make it in sports or sporting facilities. But in official structures, legal effectiveness must work as a clock. And it is assurance for internal securities, freedoms of citizens, private family, and national common values, as well as legal managements and cooperational agreements. When employees or the leaded representatives aren't willing to function by law or aren't willing to execute legal obligations in their level as per scopes, they are actually destroying existing